American-led forces 3 weeks to topple Saddam Hussein's regime. But winning the war was just the start of the battle. On the rubble of a dictatorship, in the heart of a hostile region, America hopes to transform Iraq into a stable, secular democracy. In mid-May, our crew traveled to Baghdad to capture this effort in its infancy.
The main thing is that we have freedom.
We are searching for security.
This is not liberation, this is really occupation.
What emerged was a portrait of a country poised between hope and chaos. A snapshot of Iraq after Saddam. They are the killing fields of Saddam Hussein. The mass graves unearthed since the fall of his regime. This one was discovered in early May, outside the city of Hilla, 50 miles south of Baghdad. Since then, thousands of Iraqis have combed its grim landscape, seeking their loved ones and speaking for the dead.
He even executed this handicapped person. What can a handicapped person do against the regime? Can he do anything?
This is my son, my only son.
This is what is left of him.
On this site alone, the remains of an estimated 3,000 men, women, and children, mostly Shia Muslims, massacred in the aftermath of the 1991 Gulf War.
This kind of horror in Iraq under Saddam, this will be repeated 50, 60 times over because there are mass graves all over the country.
Ahmed Chalabi has long been a leading voice in the Iraqi exile opposition to Saddam. He visited the mass grave at Hilla less than 6 weeks after returning to his native land for the first time in 45 years.
I was devastated by what I saw. One person, I was told, found a bag of bones with 2 right legs, and he was happy he found some. This is the evil that was accumulating in Iraq, had to be let out. There is no question in my mind that it was a very moral thing to do for President Bush to come and help us get rid of Saddam.
Arrived in Baghdad in May, a month after Saddam's fall, to find a city scarred by the war and crippled by the chaos that followed. Electricity was sporadic, clean water scarce, phone service non-existent. Piles of garbage rotted in the 100-degree heat. Law and order had collapsed. An explosion of violent crime kept schools closed and businesses shuttered. And in a country awash in oil, the wait for a tank of gas could be up to 3 days. Yet in the face of all that, what seemed most striking was the endurance of the people. They had survived Saddam, and for now at least, they were willing to give the Americans a chance.
When I see the American soldiers in Baghdad, I wish to hold them and kiss them because they stay with us from Saddam.
The Al Zahawi Cafe is a Baghdad landmark, one of the oldest coffee shops in the city, and one of the few still open for business. Here, men come to smoke, drink tea, and engage in the Iraqi national pastime, conversation. A month earlier, they could not have spoken freely about the suffering they endured under Saddam.
If I speak with you in the past time, I was killed.
Now, however, they were eager to share their opinions.
They say that American came to the area with an intention to control oil.
There is no security in Baghdad, no police.
I hate Saddam very much. I hope I kill him with my hands.
There's a buoyant sense of expectation and certainly a sense that Saddam is gone, the great threat in people's lives is gone.
Patrick Tyler is the Baghdad bureau chief for the New York Times.
The mood out there is also angry because people have and project intense expectations on the occupying powers, on Britain and the United States, to make it better quickly. They have enormous admiration for the United States and awe for our technological and economic power. And therefore, it baffles them that we can't fix things quickly.
Our coalition will stay until our work is done. And then we will leave. And we will leave behind a free Iraq.
In the months since Saddam's fall, American officials had been careful to define the Allied presence in Iraq as a liberation, not an occupation. That left the question, if the U.S. wasn't going to run the country, who was? Some believe the answer could be found here, in the once posh Baghdad neighborhood of Mansour. Until recently, the Iraqi hunting club was the playground of the ruling Ba'ath Party elite and a favorite hangout of Saddam's notoriously decadent son, Uday. In the wake of the war, it was taken over by the Iraqi National Congress, the opposition group headed by Ahmed Chalabi, and funded in large part by the Pentagon. The place now feels more like the headquarters of a political ward boss, complete with a steady stream of locals who come to ask the INC for favors.
The INC always has had two objectives: remove Saddam and the Ba'athist dictatorship and establish democracy in Iraq. Now we're almost finished the first objective. We're just starting the second one.
Chalabi himself spends much of his time at meetings like this one, with a group of local Arab leaders. A controversial figure both here and in Washington, the 58-year-old former exile insists he has no political ambitions of his own. Yet his close ties to hawks in the Bush administration have all but guaranteed him a key role in Iraq's reconstruction.
We have every intention of creating a coalition provisional government on Iraqi territory.
In December 2002, Chalabi met in London with opposition leaders representing a range of Iraq's ethnic and religious factions, from the Kurds in the north to the Shiites in the south. They agreed to put aside their differences and work together, as well as with the U.S. and Britain, to build the foundation for a democratic Iraq.
Iraq cannot be taken single-handedly by one group or another group. We have to build our nation. We have to build our country. No one of us have the magic to build it on his own.
The alliance, now known as the Leadership Council, had continued to meet regularly since the fall of Saddam. Tonight's meeting was hosted by Iyad Alawi, head of the CIA-backed Iraqi National Accord. The mood was buoyant. Just a week earlier, the American civilian administrator in Baghdad, General J. Garner, had indicated that an Iraqi-led interim government could be in place as soon as the end of May. The impossible dream of an Iraqi democracy suddenly seemed tantalizingly real. and the men around this table had been given every reason to believe they would be its nucleus.
What unites this group is this sense of mission for a new Iraq. They have enormous strains of conflict and contradiction in their ideologies and their outlooks, but they have stayed remarkably united because they know that this is the chance of their lifetime to make a new country.
But the civility around the table stood in sharp contrast to the near anarchy outside. And as the Leadership Council was about to discover, the transition to democracy, like everything else in Iraq, was still up for grabs. This is the shrine of Imam Ali, the holiest site in the sacred Shiite city of Najaf. Ruthlessly oppressed by Saddam, Shiites make up 60% of Iraq's 24 million people. They are the most unpredictable force in post-war Iraqi politics. One some fear could tilt the country toward an Islamic theocracy.
We don't accept a government forced upon us because we sacrificed dearly for 23 years.
It's the afternoon of May 12th, a month after Saddam's fall, and our crew has made the 2-hour trip south from Baghdad to witness a homecoming. The return of Ayatollah Mohammed Bakr al-Hakim, a powerful Shiite spiritual leader who has lived in exile in Iran since 1980. Al-Hakim heads the Supreme Council for the Islamic Revolution in Iraq, or SIRI. SIRI, which has its own 10,000-man militia, gets its money from Tehran, not Washington. Yet it is also part of the Leadership Council, the alliance of opposition groups expected to form the core of an interim Iraqi government.
We want Al-Hakim to be the leader because he is from Al-Najaf and because he has been opposing Saddam's regime for many years.
By 5:30, a crowd of thousands had packed into the square. Many carried posters of Al-Hakim. A few posters of another Shiite leader who once lived in Najaf, Ayatollah Khomeini, the leader of the Iranian Revolution. Suddenly a commotion broke out at the entrance to the mosque. Al-Hakim had arrived. Moments later, he appeared. Standing above a sign that read, "Only we can shape our political future," he exhorted his followers to take the country's destiny into their own hands. They responded with chants, until recently reserved for Saddam. Yes, yes to Al-Hakim, and with our souls and our blood, we will protect you. The scene evoked the Bush administration's worst nightmare, to have liberated Iraq, only to have it become like Iran. For now at least, the presence of more than 150,000 American and British troops ensured that that wouldn't happen. But in the meantime, some were starting to wonder, where was the popular support for the Pentagon's presumptive favorite, the head of the Iraqi National Congress, Ahmed Chalabi? Chalabi's own homecoming, back in early April, had been a chaotic affair. With Allied forces on the outskirts of Baghdad, the 58-year-old was airlifted by the U.S. military to a makeshift compound in southern Iraq. Accompanying him was an American-trained militia called the Free Iraqi Forces, as well as his 29-year-old daughter, Tamara. On the morning of April 9th, the INC caravan wound its way to the newly liberated city of Nasiriyah. There, a crowd of more than 1,000 gathered to hear the exile deliver the message that democracy was coming. It's a remarkable scene. Chalabi speaking to his countrymen for the first time. And the crowd, many of them too young ever to have experienced an open political exchange, speaking right back.
Dr. Chalabi, all of what you have said is clear. We have been bleeding for 30 years and it's time to stop. We have hardly been able to feed our children.
Dr. Ahmad, we want a free Iraq, democratic, united from the north to the south.
A few days later, Chalabi arrived in Baghdad. He promptly announced his expectation that an Iraqi-led transitional government would soon be put in place.
Then the Iraqi interim authority will be formed by Iraqis, chosen by Iraqis, and it will consist of Iraqis only.
For Chalabi, who is a Shiite, politics runs in the blood. Before the overthrow of the Iraqi monarchy in 1958, his family was one of the richest and most powerful in the country. His father served as head of the Senate. His brother was a government minister.
People just observed that when Ahmed Chalabi and the INC set up this political campus, all of a sudden all of these delegations started coming to his doorstep. Tribal leaders from the south, Shia clerics from the central, Kurds from the north, businessmen from Baghdad, that he had some skills as a native politician.
But by the time our crew arrived in Baghdad, the headiness of those first few weeks had started to fade. Chalabi seemed to have little support on the street. Many of the people we spoke to had never heard of him. Of those who had, most responded like this man, Sadiq.
Where was Ahmad Chalabi when Iraqis were hit with chemical weapons? Or mistreated? Or prevented from getting their monthly food rations?
Chalabi was also burdened by another stigma. To many, he was known as a thief. In 1989, the Petra Bank of Jordan, which Chalabi founded and ran, collapsed under controversial circumstances. He was later tried in absentia by a Jordanian military court and found guilty of fraud. Chalabi has always insisted that the scandal was orchestrated by Jordanian officials beholden to Saddam Hussein.
I think it's one of the biggest shadows over Ahmed Chalabi. Whether the charge is accurate, politically motivated, or valid, it is going to hang over him until he addresses it.
On May 16th, Chalabi sat down for an interview with Patrick Tyler of the New York Times.
I left Baghdad as a home when I was 13.
He described the journey that had brought him full circle after 45 years in exile. His return to the house he grew up in.
There was a basketball ring which I had put there for me when I was a child to play with, and I said, behind this corner there's a basketball ring, and there it was.
It's still there?
Yes.
His memories of the events that drove his family to flee.
So we were conscious of the threat of a coup d'etat for some time. I mean, years earlier, I was aware that if the radio stops broadcasting, I should be worried, because this may be a coup.
But just as he began to talk about his role in the founding of the Iraqi National Congress, the interview was interrupted. A member of the INC, acting on information provided by a local bus driver, had just unearthed yet another mass grave. Our crew decided to accompany Chalabi's daughter, Tamara, to the site, an abandoned military camp west of Baghdad. We arrived an hour later at a desolate stretch of land on the eastern shore of Lake Habaniya. Tamara translated as the INC member told us his informant's story.
And when they were executed, they were...
How in October 1991, he had driven one of several buses packed with the corpses of executed prisoners from Baghdad to this site, where the bodies were dumped into open trenches.
This is a systematic method that the Ba'ath regime, Saddam's regime, used to liquidate their opponents. And it's very much part of the legacy of this country. Missing people and, lost bodies.
To Baghdad. It was early evening, too late to resume the interview with Ahmed Chalabi. We would sit down with him again a few days later, but by then the entire political landscape of post-war Iraq had changed. When Ambassador L. Paul Bremer arrived in Baghdad in mid-May, he inherited a reconstruction effort from Jay Garner that was quickly losing credibility. American forces seemed unprepared for, and at times overwhelmed by, the role they had now assumed.
I think that America's image in Iraq is suffering because things haven't improved.
Colonel Ted Seal is the Pentagon's liaison to the Iraqi National Congress.
And people are saying, well, under Saddam's regime, we had more electricity than we've got now. We're no better off.
Fueling their frustration was the fact that several members of Saddam's ruling Ba'ath Party had already been appointed by the Americans to positions of authority. At this rally, protesters took out their anger on a statue of the Ba'ath Party's first president.
We wish to deliver a message to Mr. George Bush and the U.S. Army. You have not achieved victory yet, because you have not eliminated the Ba'ath Party.
We've got to first get law and order back. We've got to get basic services back. We've got to deal with the de-Baathification of this country.
Bremer quickly issued several sweeping decrees, including one that banned nearly 30,000 senior Ba'ath Party members from holding jobs in the public sector. Yet he remained vague on the question of who would ultimately be in charge, an Iraqi-led interim government or an American-led occupying force.
At that time, it looked like the Iraqi opposition that had helped the coalition overthrow Saddam Hussein was going to move into power quickly. And that therefore the coalition, basically the 200,000 troops in the country, was going to support them.
But in post-Saddam Iraq, such certainties were written in sand. The enormity of the job ahead was now becoming apparent. And so were the risks of turning over power too soon. At the confluence of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, about 5 hours southeast of the capital, sits the port of Basra. Here we found the vulnerability of a nascent democracy on full display. Since the 1991 Gulf War, when many of Basra's soldiers rebelled against the regime, Saddam had bled the Shiite city of more than 1 million dry. Weeks of post-war chaos had only added to the desperation. The city reeked of rotting garbage, and the lack of clean water had led to an outbreak of cholera. And yet, there were also signs of hope. Relations between the locals and the British troops overseeing the city seemed relaxed, and a fledgling city council had been working with British officials to restore basic services.
The main thing is that we have freedom.
Resmi al-Jabri was a member of the council. Already he seemed to have mastered the skills of a local politician. The appeal to civic pride.
I hope it will be a marvelous city. I hope. And we try our best to make it such. No, it's not only freedom.
The strategic no comment.
What kind of government do you think should run Iraq? A secular government or a religious government?
I have no comment on that. I can't.
And as our crew discovered, the quick escape. After the interview, the councilman slipped out a back door, leaving us to confront this scene. A mob of ex-soldiers clamoring for months of back pay. With no resources and no real authority, Basra's experiment in democracy seemed destined to fail. In fact, 2 weeks later, British commanders disbanded the council. As it turned out, several of its members, though not Resmi al-Jabri, were former Ba'ath Party officials. In Basra, we had seen the anger of a newly free people demanding what they'd long been denied. 350 miles to the north, in Saddam's hometown of Tikrit, the anger told a very different story. This is the Omar Farouk Palace, the estate the dictator built for himself and his family in Tikrit. Stripped to its shell, it spoke volumes about the sudden loss of power and privilege suffered by this Sunni Muslim stronghold.
Long live the great leader Saddam Hussein. He is in our hearts.
For the past 2 decades, Iraq had been run by and for Saddam's al-Tikriti tribe. Nowhere in the country benefited more from his reign than this city of 30,000, and nowhere remained more defiantly loyal, as one conversation in particular revealed. It started with this man, who told us he had been in Saddam's special security services, but now drove a cab. Our translator, Mason, asked him what he would do if Saddam happened to drive by right now.
Of course, I would kiss him. He is our leader and ruled us for 30 years. I love Saddam.
Before long, a crowd had gathered. Mason asked the man for his opinion about the recently unearthed mass grave at Hilla, which held the remains of thousands massacred in the Shiite uprisings that followed the Gulf War. Another man pushed his way forward with a shocking boast.
I was there. I was one of the people who was at the mass grave. We, the sons of the tribe, we killed them. They all deserve to die.
Here was the toxic mix of hatred, loyalty, and fear that had sustained Saddam's regime and threatened to poison anything that followed.
If Saddam comes back, we will all be with him, because he is our father who raised us. Anyone who does not like him is wrong.
The U.S. and Britain had shed blood and spent billions to topple Saddam. But a dangerous road now lay between liberation and democracy. Lurking in the shadows were forces eager to attack either a fragile Iraqi government or an occupying power. On Friday night, May 16th, Paul Bremer met for the first time with the Leadership Council, the alliance of opposition groups that had been told they would form the core of a new Iraqi government. During the closed-door meeting, the new civilian administrator announced a dramatic change of plans. The push to create an Iraqi-led interim government, he said, was being postponed indefinitely. Instead, the coalition was pursuing a United Nations resolution that would formally recognize it as an occupying authority.
This was deeply disappointing to the opposition. It was a big shift because they had been told they were going to rule.
It would take several days for the scope of this shift to sink in. When it did, our crew was given exclusive permission to capture the Leadership Council's response.
We urge you not to reduce our moral authority on the people by calling this an occupation. I'm afraid it's one of the very...
By our second week in Baghdad, it had become apparent that post-war Iraq was like a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. About the only thing we knew for sure was that the story we had come to cover, the birth of democracy, had taken a very different turn. May 20th. At the headquarters of the Iraqi National Congress, the opposition groups that made up the Leadership Council met for the first time since being told that the creation of an interim government had been postponed. They were there to speak their piece to a delegation headed by Sir David Manning, foreign policy advisor to British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Our crew was given exclusive access to the closed-door meeting, which revealed the growing tensions in an already delicate partnership. The British envoy began by cautioning patience.
You can't suddenly leap from what you have suffered, this terrible authoritarian tyranny, to fully fledged pluralist democracy in one easy move.
The opposition groups responded, one by one, with different versions of the same warning. Delay democracy, and you'll become a target.
But we think that liberation is one part of the task. The other is democratization of Iraq. Without democracy, it is very difficult to expect that this will last forever.
I think the major concerns politically is an Iraqi independent government. People are worried and concerned that there will be some kind of occupying authority, occupying forces.
If this is changed in a way, or perceived in the Arab world, in the region, really there will be opposition in many different ways.
You realize that what you are giving the Iraqi interim authority now, in 2003, is far less than you gave to the Iraqi government when you occupied Iraq in 1920. We do not want to make your presence here an issue. We urge you not to belittle us and reduce our moral authority on the people by calling this an occupation and by preventing the formation of occupation. Thank you.
Well, let me respond at the end by thanking you again for coming. It's wonderful to be in Baghdad. It's wonderful to be in free Baghdad. We are perfectly clear that we want to be partners with you and that we want to leave just as soon as we can. But we cannot do that unless we leave behind us structures that are worthy of you, which have been properly assembled.
By the time the meeting ended, the gulf between the coalition and the Leadership Council had become clear.
We have dinner for you. No, we have a dinner elsewhere.
The coalition believed it was too risky to turn over power to an Iraqi-led interim government. The Leadership Council believed it was too risky not to.
There are already demonstrations against U.S. occupation of the country. If you think that the former opposition leadership is strong on rejecting that, you should talk to the people.
The day after the meeting, we sat down again with Ahmed Chalabi.
Uniformly, across the board, we hear the only way to solve the problem is a provisional government. We do not accept occupation.
Chalabi argued that unless the coalition moved quickly toward Iraqi self-rule, it would squander the goodwill it had earned by getting rid of Saddam.
The Iraqi people feel victorious now, and they believed you when you said liberation. Now you're telling them this is not liberation, this is really occupation, and you were conned into this?
As for his own political fortunes, Chalabi dismissed the criticism that he had failed to generate any popular support.
Here. We have no elections.
Wait a minute. Wait, hold it. I am not a candidate for any job. I have won because I'm in Baghdad and Saddam is out of Baghdad. I'm here. I'm going to go and live in my father's house, and Saddam is scurrying somewhere out there.
The next day, May 22nd, the United Nations Security Council approved Resolution 1483, granting the American-led coalition control over Iraq and its resources. No one could say how long the Allies would stay, or who would be in charge when they left. It was now 6 weeks after the fall of Saddam, and the face of Iraq's future remained a mystery. What many were coming to fear was that it might look something like this.
We will be the ones to kill the Americans and kick them out of our country.
By May 23rd, the start of our third week in Baghdad, the liberation of Iraq had become an occupation. The U.S. and its allies had assumed the burden of the country's future, and now the clock was ticking. Already an elusive and deadly resistance seemed to be emerging, centered in the Sunni strongholds that stretched from Baghdad to Tikrit. Guerrilla attacks on American troops were being blamed on die-hard loyalists to Saddam's regime. But to this man, until just weeks before a member of Saddam's elite Republican Guard, the picture was more complicated than that.
I don't know how I feel. It's like a fog surrounding me. I can't see anything. I'm not clear if I'm happy or sad.
The man told us he hated Saddam for abandoning his troops at the height of battle.
For the betrayal and disappointment, and for the occupation that he let happen this way. I'll eat him alive. I'll kill him in the most painful way possible.
Now, however, he said he was coming to hate the occupiers even more.
As we served Iraq before, we are going to serve Iraq again. It's just a matter of time. Maybe we'll be the ones killing the Americans and kicking them out.
The reality of occupation was also starting to harden attitudes in the heart of Shiite Iraq. A backlash was growing against an influx of Western vices, from pornography to the sale of alcohol. And the heavy hand of American troops, already tired, tense, and thrust into a role for which they weren't trained, often clashed with local sensitivities. The result was a simmering mistrust that was starting to make the fight for the support of the Shiite majority look like an uphill battle. On May 24th, 2 days after the UN authorized the Allied occupation, our crew made the hour-long trip south to the holy Shiite city of Karbala. For the second time in 2 weeks, Ayatollah Mohammed Bakr al-Hakim, whose group Siri belonged to the Leadership Council, was making a dramatic return to a sacred Shiite site. In this case, the shrine of Imam Hussein, Muhammad's grandson. Once again, the cleric was given a hero's welcome. In his speech, al-Hakim denounced the UN resolution. "We refuse occupation," he declared. "We want no one to govern us." Yet at the same time, he called for a free press, a multi-party democracy, even political rights for women. But the frenzy that followed him carried an implicit threat. Deal with us, or face the consequences. That same day, back in Baghdad, the Leadership Council met to map out their response to the UN resolution. Less than 3 weeks before, they'd been told they would be the nucleus of an Iraqi-led interim government. Now they found themselves pushed to the sidelines of a full-fledged foreign occupation.
The United Nations resolution gives the occupying authority the power of approving the new government.
The question they faced was whether to cooperate with the occupation or challenge it.
They may ask some of us to join the government. Our united view on this will be essential.
In the end, they agreed to stick together and to pressure the coalition to move quickly toward an Iraqi-led interim government. The decision put them on a collision course with civilian administrator Paul Bremer, who was now pushing to create a so-called interim authority, a hand-picked council of Iraqis that would advise the coalition, but have no powers of its own.
On the one hand, it's good to speak about democracy, but on the other hand, they hate to lose control.
The day before our crew left Baghdad, we spoke again with Ahmed Chalabi. He put a positive spin on the fact that Bremer had backed away from the Leadership Council.
He has given us the opportunity to show our true colors as Iraqi patriots who are not at the beck and call of the United States. This can be done.
Chalabi argued that the coalition had everything to lose and nothing to gain by refusing to give Iraqis any real authority.
It is inconceivable to me to see what it is that the US and Britain hope to achieve by waiting. They're going to go out anyway. They are now being held responsible for all the negative things that have happened. In fact, I think they're in some sense doing us a favor by bearing the brunt of responsibility.
Our crew left Baghdad on May 28th. In the weeks that followed, the warnings of the Leadership Council appeared to be vindicated. Amid an escalating series of attacks on Allied troops and growing anger at the occupation, Paul Bremer agreed to the creation of a compromise interim government, one that would wield, in his words, real political power. On July 13th, the Governing Council of Iraq met for the first time. The group consisted of 25 Iraqis, including all 7 members of the Leadership Council. As their first official act, they abolished 6 national holidays celebrated under Saddam Hussein. They also created a new national holiday, April 9th, the day Baghdad fell.
Coming Tuesday to the Discovery Times channel at 8. An encore presentation of this look into the future of Iraq after Saddam. Then at 9, U.S. campaigns to resurrect fallen nations show very mixed results. Look back as America walks the fine line between lasting peace and turmoil.
If you come in as an occupying power, you can't do everything yourself.
Raising the flag. It's all this Tuesday on the Discovery Times channel. To get the Discovery Times channel, call your digital cable